I'm Andy Marino, editor of Asian Trader. Now, today's headlines cover a lot of ground: charity, statistics, government policy. On the surface, not much connects them, but look a little closer and there's a single question running underneath all of it. Why do some retailers build businesses that last while others simply operate stores? I want to spend a few minutes this morning drawing that thread out because I think there are some genuinely important lessons hiding in plain sight this week. And every retailer watching this should pay attention. Leading retailer Priyesh Vicaria has donated £6,000 towards a Mount Kilimanjaro fundraising challenge taking place in memory of a fellow retailer, Neela Patel. 21 climbers will attempt Africa's highest mountain at 5,895 meters in aid of three charities close to Neela's heart: Reuben's Retreat, Awaken Love for Africa, and Dr. Kershaw's Hospice. Now, most people will read that story and see charity. Straightforward, admirable, nothing more complicated than that. But I'd put it slightly differently. I see customer retention. And here's the contrarian bit. Retailers often treat community investment as a cost, a line item and something you do once real business has been taken care of. But I think that's the wrong way around entirely. Consider the position the average customer is actually in. They can buy milk, bread, soft drinks, a lottery ticket and a bag of crisps from half a dozen different shops within walking distance. Competition in the purest sense has never been fiercer. So why does someone choose one local retailer over another? It's very rarely because that retailer is tuppence cheaper. It's trust, it's recognition and it's relationships, a sense of connection to the place. The retailers who understand this instinctively grasp something the spreadsheets tend to miss. People support businesses that support them in return. So community isn't a separate department from commercial success. It is, in a very real sense, part of the commercial strategy. And that is why precisely the strongest independent retailers tend to become institutions within their communities rather than remaining simply shops. £3 billion. That's how much national lottery players have generated for good causes through co-op stores since 1994. Sit with that for a second. £3 billion, raised a few pounds at a time, at the till, over 3 decades. The campaign marking it celebrates thousands of community projects funded through that money. Youth programs, well-being centres, and charities tackling loneliness, supporting people through cancer, and much else besides. So why should an independent retailer watching this care about a co-op campaign? Because it demonstrates something increasingly central to retail as a whole. Customers want to feel that their spending achieves something beyond the transaction itself. The most successful retailers, I'd argue, have simply stopped selling products. They are creating participation. They're giving customers a way to feel connected to something larger than the shopping list. And as convenience retail becomes more crowded, more competitive, that emotional connection stops being a nicety and starts becoming commercially valuable. The businesses that grasp this will build a loyalty that outlasts anything achieved by competing on price alone. Overall, UK retail sales volumes fell by 0.5% in July, but food sales actually rose by 0.5%. Meanwhile, in the same month, online retail fell by 3.6%. Clothing and footwear fell by 2.7%. Household goods declined by 1.9%. So what does that tell us? Consumers, I think, are becoming considerably more selective. They are cutting discretionary spending while holding the line on essentials, food, drink, and the small local occasions that come with them. The World Cup helped, the heatwave helped, and people firing up the barbecue on a warm evening helped too. Food and drink held up while much of the rest of retail struggled to keep pace. And here's the underlying lesson, and it's worth stating plainly. Many retail sectors depend on customers wanting something. Convenience retail far more often benefits from consumers needing something, and that distinction is a genuine competitive advantage in uncertain economic times. Arguably, the most durable one this sector has. So what's the practical takeaway? Lean into what convenience already does well. Keep the everyday essentials, food, drink, the top-up shop, front and centre, rather than trying to chase categories where spending is being cut back. Range for the occasions people can't put off, the school night dinner, the impromptu barbecue, the evening top-up. That's not a defensive position. In a month where clothing, household goods and online all fell, it's the strongest hand this sector is holding. Inflation has now risen to 2.9%, its highest level in 4 months. At first glance, that looks like bad news, and in one sense it is. But here's the more interesting number. Underneath it, food inflation has actually cooled to 1.3%, its lowest level in almost 5 years, since September 2021. So why has headline inflation gone up at all? Energy. Household bills rose by about 13%, and that alone has done most of the work in pushing the overall figure higher. For retailers, that distinction matters more than it might appear, because consumers don't experience inflation category by category. They simply feel that the household budget is tighter than it was, which means value remains critical. Promotions remain critical, and price perception remains critical. But there's a second lesson here, and I think it's the more encouraging one. Retailers and the wider food industry have become remarkably effective at absorbing cost pressure. It's taken real effort to keep food inflation this low while other costs have climbed. The open question is whether that discipline can hold if the wider inflationary pressure continues through the autumn. So here's the lesson for anyone running a shop rather than a spreadsheet. Don't mistake a calm month for a settled trend. The industry has bought itself some breathing room on food costs through sheer discipline, tight buying, careful promotions, absorbing margin where it had to. That discipline needs to hold, not relax, going into autumn. If energy costs keep climbing and squeeze wider trading costs, the retailers who've built in some resilience now, rather than assuming today's calm continues, will be the ones who aren't caught. Wales has officially appointed Exchange for Change as administrator of its deposit return scheme ahead of launch in October 2027. The scheme will include plastic bottles, metal cans, and glass containers. Most people will file that away as an environmental story, and I'd suggest it is first and foremost an operational one, because every affected retailer now needs to start thinking in practical terms about store space, storage capacity, staff training, customer flow, and process management. The BSDA, the British Soft Drinks Association, has already flagged the added complexity of including glass from day one. And here's the reality that tends to get lost in stories with a launch date 2 years away. The retailers who start planning now will have a considerable advantage over those who wait until 2027 actually arrives. The big operational changes, in my experience, rarely become easier simply because we choose to ignore them for a while longer. So what does starting now actually mean in practical terms? Walk your own store today and ask where a reverse vending machine or a return point would physically go. Talk to your supplier and your trade body about glass handling specifically, since that's the part everyone agrees is hardest. And start the staff conversation early, not as a compliance briefing in September 2027, but as something your team now has had 2 years to get used to. October 2027 will arrive whether you've planned for it or not. The only choice retailers actually have is whether they're ready when it does. So what's the takeaway from today? Community matters. Trust matters. Customer loyalty matters. Operational discipline matters, and adaptability matters. Whether we're talking about a £6,000 charity donation, £3 billion raised for good causes, inflation figures that hide more than they reveal, or a DRS scheme 2 years out, the thread running through all of it is the same. Retail is becoming more complex, but it is also, I'd argue, becoming more valuable. The retailers who succeed won't simply be the ones who sell the most products. They'll be the ones who build trust, manage change well, and stay close to the communities they actually serve. That's all for today's Asian Trader Intelligence. I'm Andy Marino. Thanks for watching. And for the latest retail news, analysis, and insights, visit asiantrader.biz.